Greetings programs, welcome back to the Game Grid. It's Gaming Magic Markets, Baldur's Gate 3, and in this video I wanted to talk to you about a class that is awesome. It's so much fun. It's got such unique play styles in the game of Dungeons and Dragons, and I really think Larian has made a great effort at recapturing the amazing capabilities of the Druid class. If you haven't guessed already, I've gone and got myself a hireling, and just to show off in this video what some of the things you can do as a Druid. I'm going to go through each of the subclasses, and I want to pick out some of the highlights, some of the choices you're going to make, and of course show you just how different some of the subclasses are. If you like controlling the battlefield, healing up your colleagues, smashing enemies with Ice Storm in an area of effect, conjuring magical berries to heal and feed your party, polymorphing your enemies into into sheep, perhaps. These are the kinds of things that you can do as a druid, and it's a lot of fun. And quite apart from that, we're able to choose a lot of different wild shapes. That's a key feature of druids, and so you can become an owlbear yourself if that's what you want to do. Now, what I want to do for this video is I want to just go through each of the three subclasses. So let's go talk to Withers, and let's see if we can respec and let's do that now. And so we're going to pick out the Druid class, of course, and I just want to pick out some highlights and just show you how each of the subclasses are different. We're going to start with level 1. That's not when we pick the subclasses, so all we'd have to do at level 1 is just take note of certain things. So Druids are wisdom-based class. That's the emphasized ability score that you're going to need, so always have that as high as possible. Obviously speaking, there's other key ability scores. Constitution's one of them, because you're going to be potentially casting spells that need concentration. That's going to help with that. Dexterity, good for spells that are ranged based, for example, as well, and also keeping yourself alive to an extent with skill checks and so forth. Many of the spells that are you're going to be able to choose from, cantrips for a start, are going to be really useful. The two sort of unique, or two or three uniquely druid cantrips like Produce Flame, Shillelagh, and Thorn Whip. I really like those, but I can't, I can't do it. I have to go with guidance. So we're going to go with that. And abilities. I just want to make something clear. I'm not going to min-max and try and squeeze the abilities to be as efficient as possible for this video. Please understand that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to show off the Druid class and how awesome it is. For those of you who want to know how to specifically set up your ability scores, go ahead and watch other videos or other websites to find that out, and I'll be doing some in the future, so keep an eye on the channel as well. I'm just going to confirm on that. Of course, skills as well. It's not a bad idea to choose the skills that you think will matter most to your party. Okay, now we're going to level up the Druid. And level 2 is the key moment of choice for the Druid. This is where you actually get to pick your subclass. There's 3 subclasses: Circle of the Land, Circle of the Moon, Circle of the Spores, and each one is very cool in its own way. Now, being a druid, you can do most things. So you can fight on the front lines. You've got light and medium armor and shields, simple weapons, but you've actually got reasonable choice there. And then you've also got wild shapes, which is also something you get at level 2. The ability to shape yourself wild shape yourself as an action into a particular form. Not all the forms are available just yet. There are some that come at level 6, some that come later on than that, such as, well, dinosaurs and things like that. Very, very cool. And also the ability to perhaps do that as a bonus action. We'll see that. That's a particular feature of Circle of the Moon subclass. So you would pick your wild shape as not really as a feature of just any class. It is available to all classes, but the ability to be more effective as a wild shaper is something that Circle of the Moon druids actually get the benefit of. Now, Circle of the Land and Circle of the Spores have more of an emphasis on spellcasting. Circle of the Land as a general spellcaster. So what you actually get is you get a nice feature at level 2 called Natural Recovery, where you can replenish expended spell slots while out of combat. And that means that you're a little bit like a wizard in that respect. You're able to recharge some of your spell slots, get them back, on a short rest between long rests, and that means that you can be more effective without always having to have a long rest to get your spell slots back. And obviously, it's not all of them, but it's some of them, and that's a cool ability. I like that because certainly one of the replenishment features you're going to need to have, or one of the capabilities you can do is turn into wild shape. You'll also get that replenished on a short rest as well. So you can kind of get back to being mostly effective off a short rest as a druid, which is a nice thing as opposed to some other spellcasters, which are kind of emphasize more of a long rest that's required. Okay. I'll go through Circle of the Moon and I'll go through Circle of the Spores, but right now I just want to take a look at Circle of the Land. Let's just talk about cantrips, and of course at this point, Produce Flame, great cantrip. Obviously there are others, Shillelagh's great. I would go with Produce Flame myself. Let's not talk too much about that. We'll talk about some of the first level Druid spells, Druid specific spells. Thunder Wave is not one of those, and neither are those, but I would say like Druid spells, which really are awesome at first level and second level like we have here. Obviously some way of healing, and Healing Word is key. It's one of the best healing abilities in the game because you can do so at range. I like Create or Destroy Water. So many things to do with that. And of course, because we've got Ice Knife and potentially the ability to freeze our water that we create, we've got a lot of different ways of utilizing that and so forth. So I'll leave it at that, but let's just say I would pick some of those, and maybe even speak with animals. That's a great spell to have so early on because you can do it straight away, and there's so many animals to speak to, especially in Act One. And I highly recommend you do that at some point through a playthrough of your choice. It's a lot of fun. That and speaking with the dead is great. Okay, so we're just going to accept that. That's our level 2 done as a Circle of the Land. Now, Circle of the Land, remember, is more of a spellcasting emphasis. So now we must pick an actual land type that we can choose. And what this does at level 3 is it gives us certain level 2 spells that might not be in our spell book. So some of them, like Mirror Image, Misty Step, might come from other spell books, more like Wizards and so forth. The likes of Invisibility, Mirror Image, Melf's Acid Arrow, and Web, for example, coming from other more sorcery-based or wizard-based spell books, and schools of magic that you wouldn't normally get. And so I would like, say, for example, Misty Step and Mirror Image, but you could pick whatever you'd like. I love Misty Step. You'll see that in other videos. I talk about that. I like to have it on almost all, if not all, of my characters at all times because as soon as I can get it, and if I can get it from a spell and also potentially from equipment, even better because then I've got lots of choice. And when we prepare our spells at this level, now we've got level 2, I just want to highlight a couple of spells here that you might want to consider. For example, Moonbeam, great spell. It is concentration based, as many of the, especially second level spells, druid spells, are based on concentration, like Flaming Sphere, like Spike Growth, Heat Metal. Unfortunately, concentration based, but that's fine. And one of the things you can do with Moonbeam, it's a bit of an AoE spell, and each turn it triggers. What's nice about it is that enemies moving through the area, a bit like Cloud of Daggers. It's great. You can have enemies taking damage on each turn anew. But what it can be you can do is you can actually use an action on another turn to actually move the beam. So you can move it to where a clump of enemies is or where your enemy has moved now. So it's actually a bit more versatile in that way. The other thing I want to highlight, many people know Bark Skin, great spell. Heat Metal's great. But Spike Growth, I really like Spike Growth. Cause your enemies damage as they move through an area that actually is going to slow them down as well. I use it to control the battlefield, create choke points, and also maybe even damage enemies where they're forced to come to me through a particular area. Great spell, and we can move on as such. Level 4, Circle of the Land, and of course this is where we get, as most druids do, get the wild shape Deep Rothe. That's another druid wild shape that you can choose. Nice one. Allows you to cast Dancing Light and charges. And of course we get a feat at this point. Just wanted to say, one of the most important cantrips, guidance. Please do consider taking that at any opportunity on any spellcaster that actually gets it. You're gonna love that spell if you haven't, that cantrip if you haven't used it already. I've just picked Shillelagh just because it was just one of the ones. Now, as a spellcaster, I'd probably pick Warcaster. You know why? Because it helps with concentration-based saving throws. So that means that I could probably maintain spells better if I than if I didn't have it. But of course, there's so many nice feats, lovely feats, and I'm not, it's not a video to talk about those. And so I'm going to accept that. Just want to go through to level 5 and then maybe level 6, and then I'll show you some of the key features of the other two Druid subclasses that you can pick. So we're still Circle of the Land, and at this level, we actually get something called Wild Strike, which means if we're wild shaped, we can actually make an additional attack, a little bit like a fighter, but only when we're wild shaped. And that's still cool though, because whether you're a bear or a wolf or one of the other shapes, a deep rotte, for example, you potentially can make another unarmed strike. Doesn't maybe affect all wild-shaped attacks, but potentially the ones that are, unarmed and more simple attacks. Some great spells at level 3: Call Lightning, Sleet Storm, affecting areas of effect. A lot of other spellcasters get fewer area of effect type spells, so druids are, get that in abundance. Also, Plant Growth. I'm going to pick that actually. So when we go to Circle of the Land, and I get to pick some of the other spells that are always prepared and might not be in our spell list because they're from other spell lists. I'm going to pick the one with haste. Key spell that, and thrown in with that is Sleet Storm, which is very cool. But I would pick, at this level, I would make sure that I've got Plant Growth and Call Lightning. So I've got another AoE spell, and I've got Plant Growth. Plant Growth is great because then I get the ability to actually lay out another area that, on the battlefield where enemies are going to be even slower. Their movement speed is not halved, but it's quartered. Doesn't do any damage, unlike Spike Growth, but it definitely is going to slow them down. And you would say, well, yeah, but you've already got Spike Growth. I know, but if I did. Well, Plant Growth you can forget about because it's not concentration based. You cast it, it's there. Enemies just have to deal with it for 10 turns. Concentration based Spike Growth, if you might actually lose it. So at least with Spike Growth, it's causing damage, but you can have both of them going at the same time, different parts of the battlefield, and that's very, very powerful. Last choice here I'm going to pick is level 6. Obviously other levels going to give other things, but I just thought I would show you up to that point, and then we could talk about the other subclasses very quickly. Look, Druid of the Land, Circle of the Land is actually going to find it easier to move through terrain that slows you down, including those spell-casted areas that you might have created yourself. And then we also get the key Wild-Shaped Panther and Owlbear, which is what you get at level 6 as any Druid, and it's very cool. Being able to use an Owlbear, very much more hit points than most of the other shapes. Also the ability to rage, a bit like a barbarian, and a couple of AoE abilities. Very, very nice. Okay, so I'm just going to accept that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go to level 7. I just want to go and show you some of the other subclasses. Okay, so let's go to Withers. Let's get him to. Oh, he's decided to talk about this now. Okay, I don't want to talk about it. So let's just get on with it. Okay, he does that with most of the characters. So let's help him change the class. This time we're going to pick a Druid, and we're actually going to. I'm just going to go through and accept the defaults there. Now I want to go to level 2, but this time with level 2, I'm going to pick a different subclass. So let's go and pick Circle of the Moon, because I want to just talk about that as a difference from Circle of the Land. Let's go pick Circle of the Moon, and notice how I didn't get the ability to choose a cantrip. That went away. That Circle of the Land feature there. Circle of the Moon, less of a spell casting emphasis. You're still a spellcaster, get some great spells, all the Druid stuff, and you can't replenish your spell slots out of combat. That's Circle of the Land only. But what you can do is you can get a new shape for the early levels. Until you get Owlbear, you can wild shape as a bear, and that's sort of a very good tank. and it's a very good tank because it can actually goad enemies. You can see it there. You've got goading roar, and that allows you to get enemies to attack you as opposed to your colleagues. So it's almost like a true tank in a way with a taunt. We also get the ability to, as a bonus action, expend spell slots to regain hit points while in wild shape. So the idea is with Circle of the Moon, you're going to be emphasizing wild shape, and not only that, a very key feature, look at this, you're able to combat wild shape as a bonus action. Okay, so instead of just being able to change shape as an action, and that's your action for the turn, you can, as a bonus action, change into a different form of beast. So you can basically be, let's say, a panther. You can stop the panther shape, go back into your bipedal shape, and then shape change wild shape into, let's say, a bear or an owlbear, for example, if you've unlocked that. And that can be massive because I've used that, for example, to smash enemies. I take down one enemy, and now I'm going to turn into a raven. I'm going to fly up onto the rooftop of a building, and then I can regroup out of harm's way, and I can decide what I'm going to do, or I can sneak up on other enemies as a panther or whatever, and that's fantastic, isn't it? And so I actually really love the Circle of the Moon subclass from that point of view. Because you've got that bonus action and action-based shape changing, and really it changes it from action to bonus action. You've got that ability to do other things as well as shape change. And when you shape change, obviously that then stops your spell casting abilities other than some of the shape change abilities. So as a bonus action, you could basically, without taking an action, get out, shape change back to bipedal form, cast a spell, and then as use up your bonus action to shape change again back into the same shape or into something else. And that's, of course, if you've got wild shape charges left. But as you get more levels, you're going to get more of those as well. Okay, just going through, just going to select that, and let's just see some of the nuances of the wild shape. And really at level 4, Druid Circle of the Moon, which is this subclass. I'm just going to accept again because we don't need to talk about spells and that kind of thing. At level 4, the Druid of the Moon subclass doesn't only get Deep Rothay, they also get Dire Raven. So you are a larger raven than, say, the ravens you get with Find Familiar and that kind of thing. That's your shape. You get 13 hit points, so much more than the other ravens, but also you get the ability to fly. So you're one of the first classes to actually get to fly around the battlefield, other than subclass of sorcerer and that kind of thing. That is not to be underestimated. Like I said before, an example, attacking enemies maybe with a spell or in wild shape form, and then you transform into a raven and get on out of there until, and hide, and then come back and do some damage in another part of the battlefield. Very, very cool. And of course, as a wild shape emphasizing druid, then maybe I'll choose a different feat than I did for the Circle of the Land Druid. So maybe I would choose, for example, Sentinel. That'd be quite good. If I'm going to be more of a tank like the bear or, let's say, Owlbear to an extent, then maybe I want Sentinel features. Very, very nice. That would work well. Maybe there are other features, feats that would work nicely as well. So, it's entirely up to you, and your mileage may vary. Okay. So that's what I want to leave the Circle of the Moon. As I say, awesome from the point of view of just being able to shape change on a bonus action. Just that alone, very, very cool. Let's go take a look at Circle of the Spores. Circle of the Spore, and just see what that's all about. Let's and that in itself is an awesome. I think it's very, 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 very popular as a druid subclass choice in the tabletop. Okay, so let's go to level 2, and now we're going to pick Druid of the Spore. Circle of the Spore, I should say. Apologies. And so that's the subclass Circle of the Spores. And of course, that still means then that you are more of a spell casting focus, but this one's quite different. You're almost like a necromancer spellcaster focus, but you're more along the lines of, say, mushrooms, fungi, fungal growth, spores, necrosis. And as it says, viewing death and necrosis, fungal growth and sporulation as just another part of life. You can manipulate such spores to augment yourself and harm your foes. Very nice. Now, that means that wild shape goes back to being an action, not a bonus action like Circle of the Moon gets. You also won't get the Dire Raven at 4, but you get some very nice features. A couple of them shown here: Symbiotic Entity and Halo of Spores. Let's just talk about Symbiotic Entity first. This counts as a wild shape, and so it uses wild shape charges as well as actions. But what it does is it actually gives you temporary hit points per level above the level that you get it at level 2. So by level 4 or 5, you're starting to get 24 temporary hit points, which is amazing, as you can imagine. Not only that, but you also can deal an additional 1 to 6 necrotic damage while you have them. So you're buffing your damage when you're attacking. Now, that damage is going to enhance many forms of attack, not just maybe attacking with weapons and that kind of thing. So it's up to you to find out what those are, but I can tell you that it adds to your damage. Fantastic. The other thing is it also affects Halo of Spores by doubling the damage. Okay. So really, symbiotic entity is the kind of wild shape you're going to use in effect, or what you're going to use your wild shape charges on when you're a Circle of the Spores druid. Okay, and let's take a look at Halo of Spores, and that's going to deal 1 to 4 damage, necrotic, and of course, if you're going to cast that, it's going to double that damage when you do that as when you're under the symbiotic entity, but the other thing is that it's a reaction. Now that's interesting, isn't it? Because what that does is it allows you to cast Halo of Spores as a reaction. It means that it's not taking your action or bonus action. It's actually a separate, action or event on its own. And that is also a replenishable resource. You tend to get 1 reaction per turn, which most of the time we might not use. And so that's awesome from that point of view. And I'll just take you through Circle of the Spores, because at certain levels you're also going to get spells or spell-like abilities that enhance what you're able to do. So for example, blindness, which would normally be a necromancy type spell, and detect thoughts. These are very similar to, if you've been to the Underdark, you know why these abilities are coming in. Okay, is it the Myconids in the Underdark? They give you a good clue as to what it's all about being a druid of the Circle of the Spores. And so I'm just going to accept the defaults there. Let's go on, because I want to see the next level up and talk about this one, which is, okay, we get the Deep Rothay, we get the feats, and of course when we choose the feats, we would want to choose ones that are appropriate as such. And as we go forward, let's go to, let's just pick a feat. Doesn't really matter what it is. Let's say Elemental Adept and Cantrips. Let's just pick Produce Flame. Okay. And, oh, okay, I need to pick, right, there we go. Okay, as I say, it doesn't matter. I just want to literally just show you what's happening at some of the later levels. So now we get that Wild Strike, okay, any form that allows us to do that, but we also get a couple of very cool spells, and these are always available, always prepared, as it says there, okay, because they're basically class based. They don't count towards the maximum prepared spells. And we get Animate Dead, and we get Gaseous Form, and again these come from the Circle of the Spores choice subclass. Okay, so you're able to raise a dead body, and essentially how you're doing it is not through the normal magical means, but it counts as Animate Dead. The other thing is you can transform yourself into a gas cloud of spores, presumably, and move around that way. Awesome level 3 spells, and you're getting them at level 5 in addition to other regular druid level 3 spells. Let's just go through and go to level 6, and we just see if there's anything else that's interesting there. Well, that's of course where we get the wild shapes, Owlbear, Bear, and Panther. But we get one more ability which I want to talk about, and that's Fungal Infestation. That's where we get to As a reaction again, look at that. So it's not a spell, it's not counting as a spell slot used and all that kind of stuff. It is a fungal infestation charge, and you can do it a number of times with those fungal infestation charges, which are now a new replenishable resource that you can use as Circle of the Spores. And you can target a beast or a humanoid corpse, and you can raise them as a zombie, a bit like if you had animated the dead. And so you can start to raise an army of spore based animated dead characters, and that's awesome. So look out for the corpses and start to use them as your own little private army. So it's almost like a necromancer, wizard, or sorcerer, but this one we're actually, let's say a wizard or sorcerer or cleric using animate dead, but we are actually doing it all with spores, and that's, from a role-playing perspective, might be very interesting for folks to sink their teeth into that one, and that's why it's probably so popular on the tabletop. And not only that, but just, some awesome, awesome abilities like symbiotic entity and halo of spores and that kind of thing. So wonderful class, and you can see all other classes, share benefits, share the wild shape, share spell casting, and all that kind of stuff, but have a different emphasis and are very, very cool in their own rights. And of course, then we now start to get into the realms of multi-classing. That's beyond the scope of this particular video. I didn't promise it would be a short one this time, and others have picked on other videos that I've had, and I've said I want to make a short video. This one, I knew it was going to go about 25 minutes. I hope you've enjoyed it anyway, and I hope you'll be encouraged and excited to start to create your druids, or get further in if you're a druid already. If you like the video, please like it. Comment. Let me know what druids, druid class and subclasses you pick for multi-classes and multi-class builds that you're excited about. We did that with the Bard, and so many people have chimed in. I really, really am grateful for that. It's exciting to see all the different, and for folks to get tips from that. So thanks as always. Great to, have a video again for you. I appreciate you watching. Thanks for subscribing, anyone who has and who hasn't yet. I appreciate it, and just the support is awesome. Loving it. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time. Enjoy Baldur's Gate 3.